Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I'm going to take a little bit of time here and I'm going to talk about being prepared for power outages as far as heat, lighting, and cooking. Power outages are inevitable, and we're coming into the cold season right now. It's warm here today. We've got some southern wind and it's a little rainy. I just fired up the wood stove, and mostly, you know, it's in the 50s, but mostly because when it rains here quite a bit, we end up getting a lot of condensation on the concrete here in the barn. So I just wanted to dry it out a little bit. But that got me thinking about if the power goes out, how are you prepared? So the very first thing I want to talk about is heat. You got to stay warm. And what I've got here are two kerosene heaters. This one here is called a Perfection, made in the United States. It's probably somewhere around 100 years old. You can find them fairly inexpensive, anywhere from 25 to 100 bucks. And I'll explain why I like these older heaters better than the new ones. This here is an Aladdin. They make these in England, and if I had to choose, I'd say the Aladdin is probably more efficient. However, the wicks are more expensive. I do have two more up here on the shelf behind me, so I've got two Aladdins, two Perfection heaters. And one of the reasons I really like these kerosene heaters, these old ones, is because the wicks, which by the way, you should have extra wicks for all of your heaters and any parts you might need that are consumables. But the wicks in these are cotton. They're not a synthetic like the new kerosene heaters use. And what that means is, for me, if it power outage drug on, I needed to run these more long term, you could run these on diesel. Obviously it would put off a little bit more odor, but it would keep you warm. Diesel and kerosene are pretty close. Kerosene's just refined a little bit more. So it is possible to run these on diesel. The new synthetic wicks, they'll plug up and they won't wick anymore. So you won't be able to run them on diesel. Another thing here, I have got a hurricane lantern. Now I bought this, and I've got two more back there. I bought that probably 13, 14 years ago, and they've been great ever since. When I bought these, they were $3 a piece at Walmart, and I think these are running somewhere around 20 now. But you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. So that's the main advantages of these. They obviously require no power to run. They're quiet and efficient. Kerosene has a great storage life, and I'll show you my kerosene storage setup and how much I keep on hand. But that is probably some of the best pros to having kerosene heaters. You can use the top here for cooking. They do have vents here that will allow for and they have moldings, on top that will allow you to set a pan on there to cook with. Kerosene doesn't get the hottest, but it can boil water, given about 45 minutes or so, in my experience. The other thing is, versus propane, kerosene heaters actually put off light. So you will get some ambience, by running these over propane. But we're going to talk about propane as well, because I do have that fuel as a backup as well. There's some downfalls though with these kerosene heaters. The cost of fuel is very expensive. You know, especially in wintertime, it does go up. Kerosene can have an odor to it. Generally speaking, when you want to use one of these, it's best to take it outside and light it, because you will get a little bit of smoke and smell off of it at first. Let it warm up and then bring it inside as you're ready to use it. If these are not used properly, obviously there is a risk of fire. As with anything, some of the propane heaters we're going to talk about have tip over protection. They're a little bit safer. So you probably want to be around these as you're using them. So another thing you can buy for these, I don't have it because I could just use tools I've got on hand, but you can buy a wick cleaning tool or a kit. And over time, carbon builds up on it, and they do require a little bit of maintenance and cleaning on that. So you can buy a kit for cleaning that. Another good thing you should have on hand is a carbon monoxide detector. Obviously, you're using these inside of an enclosed area. If it's not very well vented, you will create a little bit of carbon monoxide. Anyways, let's go over and check out my kerosene setup. Okay, so we're in the corner of my barn, and I do have all these sitting on a pallet that keeps the temperature of the fuel more consistent rather than sitting on the concrete, and it reduces condensation in the fuel. This one here is obviously diesel. I use that for my tractors and everything else. And this one over here I haven't marked yet, but that is my kerosene jug. 50 gallons of it sitting in there. When I grab these barrels, they actually have mineral oil in them. They are a grade A plastic, and they're just fine for storing diesel and kerosene. I do have these Fill-Rite pumps that I use to pump it out of. On this one over here, I haven't quite got down far enough, so I just use my little electric fuel siphon. So I didn't mention before, but I do run these hurricane lanterns on kerosene. I also have extra wicks for them in case you didn't see them. But let's go ahead and move on to propane. All right, so moving on to propane here, I've got two of these buddy heaters. These are the standard buddy heaters. One's an old one, it's probably 15 years old. This one here is brand new, I just bought it. And there's some differences between them. They've made some changes and upgrades to the new model. But either way, they both work really well. They both take 1 pound propane tanks, and you can run them off of one of these, a 20 pound tank. And what you can do is go out and buy yourself a hose like this, and it's got the adapter to plug onto your 20 pound tank, and then that end right there plugs into your buddy heater, and you can get a little bit more longevity out of the burn. So that's one nice thing about that. I also have a hose here, which is nothing but an extension. Basically, it's got the same ends. You plug one end into your propane tank and into the buddy heater, and for whatever reason you want, you can extend that tank away from your heater. There are ways that you can fill your 1 pound containers from a 20 pound. This right here is an adapter, and you basically thread this into your propane tank. You thread your 1 pound tank onto that, and the way you do that is you have to flip the tank over, and it helps if you freeze them first. You gotta throw your 1 pounders into the freezer and let them get cold, and that helps to draw fuel into it. So that's another option you can do for refueling those 1 pound containers. They are disposable. You're supposed to throw them away. However, if you know what you're doing, these are a very handy little adapter to have. Here's another one too. Propane and butane are pretty close, and what you can do is use this to thread on to your 1 pound propane tank. That goes into your butane appliance, and then you can run your butane appliance off of propane. And then I've got just an inline fuel gauge. Tells you how much fuel you have, and that's the extent of that. These are my solutions. There's a ton of propane, kerosene, a ton of backup heat solutions, but this is my preferred method. This here is just a sunbeam. They call this a sunflower heater, and it basically just screws onto the top of your 20 pound tank right there, and that's it. You light it, and it works the same as the buddy heaters. One nice thing about these buddy heaters though is they do have carbon monoxide detectors that will shut off the gas if the oxygen level does go low enough. The other thing is with these, and you can hear it as I flip this over, hear that? That is your shut off detection. So if these get knocked over, it will shut the gas off. There's a little ball in there, and that ball plugs off your gas, shuts it off. So they're safe to run indoors. That's the other reason I like these over other styles. I have thought about getting the little butane heaters. Right here is a butane canister, And they make nice heaters, you know, the Covia Cupid, there's other ones out there. These would be a nice heater to maybe keep in your car. I prefer to keep one of these, but in the wintertime. But you can keep one of these butane heaters as well. I always keep extra fuel. You can see here, I've got plenty of extra propane. These down here are empties that I need to refill. And one thing I do want to point out, let me grab one of these. So this is what your propane end should look like, nice and clean. However, if you leave them sit around for any length of time, they can get rusty. You can see that's got quite a bit of rust on it. And so I'll just clean these up. I'll put a little bit of oil on there and let it sit, and it basically takes care of that. I did have one that was very rusty. It's now in here and it's working fine, but you definitely want to cover that up and keep the moisture away from it, or that's what you end up with. Got to be careful with that. Okay, so one thing I do want to talk about are these 20-pound propane containers. A lot of people have a misunderstanding about them. I used to do this. I used to take these down, you know, to whatever store had these, the dollar store, whatever it was, outside of their store, and they were the blue rhinos, and I would just give them this cylinder, take a new one, and trade it in. And back when I was doing that, it was about 20 bucks to exchange a tank. However, I learned a few years back that when you do that, those blue rhino tanks are only filled to about those blue rhino tanks are only filled to about 60%. What I do now is my local TSC has a propane refilling station. I take these down and I have them filled. The only reason I could think that I would exchange one of these is if it got really rusty or really bad, and or it needed recertified. I believe that every 5 years these do have to be recertified to be filled, and in that case I could suck it up, pay the extra few dollars, and exchange it and get me a new tank. So keep that in mind. Filling them is going to cost you whatever the price of propane is, and usually that's a lot cheaper than an exchange, and you're getting more fuel. So just a tip for you guys, start doing that, quit exchanging them. So moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about cooking and a couple of the propane cook stoves that I like. I've had this one forever. It's a little rusty on top, you can see, but this thing works great. It breaks down to nothing. You know, this comes off, unscrews off the bottle, and you can really break this down and throw it anywhere you want. But I really like that. As far as lanterns, I got this Coleman here, and it, again, like most Coleman things now, it breaks down, and you can pop it open here. There we go. Okay, so sorry, my air compressor kicked on. The way these work is you take it out of the case here, right? And have your 1 pounder, sits right down in there, and you screw that on. So that's your propane lantern. So I like this option. They work very well. There's also this style here. This is an old one. I haven't had a chance to mess with it yet, but they take little 1 pounders that are the torch style. So that's another one. Okay, so that's it for small, compact. This here is a 2-burner stovetop that I bought at Harbor Freight years ago, and this thing's been great. It works really, really good. And there's a little oven that I'd like to show you. So this here is a camp oven. You can see how thin it breaks down. And what I can do is I can take this 2-burner stovetop here. We'll pull this out and I'll show it to you. A lot of people have cooktops as a means to prepare food if the power's out for emergency purposes. But not many people have this here. So we're going to unfold this. you just have clips here. So there's one here you pull up. There we go. So pull that up, there's one on top, and then this thing pops open. And you basically flip up the lid, lock it in place. Do the same thing here with the bottom, lock it in place. You want to make sure you have all these side panels here in the little, it's got little indents here so it can lock in real good. So you want to make sure those are locked in. Which I didn't do on top here, so let me get that. There we go. So we open this up, and it does have a nice cooking grate, and it just slides in some slots on the side here, and it holds it all nice and firm. On the front of this thing, you do have a temp gauge here and a handle to lock the door shut. And on the bottom, you can see where this thing sits on your burner, and that heat goes right up through here into your oven. So basically, that just sits right on top here. And now you have an oven to bake anything you want. So I see a lot of videos out there of emergency cooking, and everybody shows all these cooktops and burners. Not many people have these. So that's a good thing to get. Last time I checked, these were about $50 and well worth the money. So along the same lines as propane, we've got butane. We've talked a little bit about that. And here I've got just a little butane. We'll just take this here. I got a little butane cooktop. And you flip that over and put your little butane container inside of here. And you've got yourself a nice little compact cooktop. It comes with a case. These are about $20. I think I picked this one up at Menards, and it was a little cheaper than that. It was on sale. And so that's a good option for emergency cooking there. Good, cheap option. They work very well. You can buy these little, they're a propane butane mix, right? And what these are for usually are backpacking and camping, and they got a little bitty tiny micro stove that you can put on there for heating up meals for probably just one person yourself. So that's another fuel option that you can go with. These are fairly expensive. They're more than the butane. I believe they're more than the propane, but that is another option. And I do have one of those mini stoves. Another thing we have here are oil lamps, right? They got chimneys with them. Chimneys go right on here. That's not the right one, but you can see how it works. And oil lamps can probably run on kerosene just fine, but what I like to do is just get this stuff here. This is a paraffin lamp oil. It's made for it. It burns clean, no smell at all. This is really what you want to run in these type of lamps. Okay, I think that concludes propane and butane. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll get to you guys and answer them for you. We're going to move on to something else that's a little bit unique, I guess. And I think it might be worth your time. All right, so what I have here, these are actually called diesel heaters. More specifically, Chinese diesel heaters. They are made in China. And unfortunately with these, they do need power to run. They're a 12-volt system, so as long as you have a battery, it'll run on that. They draw, once they're started up and running, they'll draw, I believe, about a half an amp. Maybe it's 1.5. I'd have to remember how I figured that out. But these things put out an amazing amount of heat. It's really, it blew my mind the first time I got one of these and tried it. Along with this, what I've done is I went on Amazon and I found these here. This is just a 120 volt to 12 volt power supply. This is overkill. I bought the more expensive one. I think I paid $30 for this. It was 25 or 30. You don't need one this big. but I wanted to overkill it like I do everything. So what I can do is I can run these here in the barn if I want. And in fact, I've got a hole drilled in the wall for the exhaust. They do have to be vented outside. But that's an option for you. They do make these power supplies. The connections here are on the back. You just have a red and a black because it's 12 volts. This one here I have set up, you can see, with some alligator clips. That just is set up for running off of a battery. Both of them do have remote controls. This one here is right there. And I think this could be a good solution. They're very efficient on burning fuel. You could even put them outside and run them outside and plumb this in through a window, or maybe make up a board that you could cut out this circle and have that blowing into the house. It's not going to get as warm as if you have the cold air or the warm air from inside the house running through it, but it'll still heat. So these could sit outside and run. Something else about these, they're not rated in BTUs. And for those of you who don't know, a BTU is called a British thermal unit. It is basically one British thermal unit is basically one match burning. So that will give you an idea. These are rated in kilowatts. And this one here, I believe, is the 8, actually both of these are the 8 kilowatt. They are adjustable up and down. So when you look on the displays here, you will be adjusting them in kilowatts. There are conversions out there, you can figure out what kilowatts are. I believe that with the 8 kilowatt, that it ends up being about 27,000 BTU for each one of these. So that's just another thing. I wanted to bring these to your attention. I think they're neat, they're unique, they could be a very viable solution for backup heat for you. And they do put off a lot of heat. So with that being said, I want to move on, and I got one more thing I'd like to talk about, and we'll hang this up. So probably one of the best ways to prepare is to have a generator. The way I do this is, this generator is obviously in my barn, and it's right next to my electrical panel. And so what I've done is I put a plug right here, and basically I run that through a 30 amp breaker, because that's all it's good for. The 30 amp breaker has a breaker lock on it, and I keep a screwdriver up here. That way nobody can accidentally or whatever try to flip that on. And being that that's a male plug, you would hate for some kid or something to come in here and touch those and get electrocuted. So I backfeed my house and my barn and everything from this panel in my barn that goes to the house, and I shut the main off at the house. This generator here I picked up on a Father's Day sale at Tractor Supply, and I think I ended up getting it for $700. It does run on gasoline and propane, and so I try to run it on propane, so I never really have to have an issue with it. It's been about 3 years now. That battery is still good. I can't believe it, but it still works. Still holding the charge. So that would be the ultimate way to prepare for short-term power outages. You just turn everything back on. You won't even have to mess around with all of this alternative heat, cooking, and lighting. So that's the route I choose to go most of the time. We'll go ahead and take a look at all my propane storage and let you know how I do that. So we are outside behind the barn, and I keep my propane in here. Now I've got 2 empties that I have to go take in of the 20 pounders, but I do have a 100-gallon there, 3 full 20 pounds, and once I get the other ones filled, I'll have 5 extra 20-pound tanks, 7 in total. I do have a forklift, so that's my forklift tank. But it's a good idea to have extra propane stored up as well. So as you know, propane does have a long storage life. You don't have to worry about it. It'll store for years and years and years. I hope this video has been informative to you. I hope you've learned something. And I hope you guys stay warm this winter. Hopefully we don't have any issues, but it's best to be prepared if you do. You guys have a good one, and I'll see you on the next video.